And I'm back. And do you remember this vehicle? It's this 2001 Volvo V70, and it had the water pump bust, and it jumped the timing, and interference valves hit the pistons. You can see there on the pistons where the valves came down and hit the pistons. I think the pistons are okay. I'm going to clean those marks up a little bit, but I've got another head for this thing, and what I'm doing here today is I'm swapping the exhaust manifold off the old head onto the new head, and we're gonna put this thing together and get this running. All right, so here's the old head, the one with the bent valves in it. You can see some of the valves are sticking out here. There's no springs in there. There's no camshaft in there. They're just bent, you know, and that's what happens. This interference engine thing is the belt breaks, the valves come down and hit the pistons, and you ruin your engine. So for anybody that's got an interference engine, you can find out from the manufacturer. You can look it up online. If you have a timing belt that will break and cause interference in the engine, meaning that the pistons and valves will touch, you know, because when the engine's timed, the valves move out of the way and when the piston comes up, and but if that belt breaks, you know, the engine's still rotating and the valves are stopped and the pistons hit the valves, and you end up with this kind of a problem, and it's quite expensive to fix. Very often, you know, it's the whole engine's got to be thrown away or changed, and at the minimum it's the head has to come off and be rebuilt, and you're into thousands of dollars there. All right, so had some MAP gas here. I use this. It's hotter than propane, and then once they were warm, I put some PB blaster on them, and some of them just came right out real easy. See here, that's coming out easy. That one's easy. I was just hoping the nut would come off, but actually the whole stud came out, which is actually even better because I'm going to need studs for the new head. There's one here, mind you, came out so far with the stud, and then all of a sudden the nut started turning, but I can get that out with, I can double nut it later and get it out. But all but two came out really easy. Yeah, isn't it sweet when they come out so easy like that? Look at that. Just a little bit of heat. I just warmed them up a little bit, and then I put that PB blaster on them, and out they come. Okay, and let's just see if that'll move. I wonder, is it the whole stud coming, or is it just the? It looks like just the nut came off. That's okay. That's all right. Get the manifold out of the way. Is that all the bolts? That appears to be all the bolts. There's one stud didn't come out. Two studs didn't come out. All right. Let's get that a little. Oh yeah, it's loose. That should come right off there. Look at that. That came right off easy. Let's look at that. There it is. Okay, so here's the head. There's solid lifters in this one. Most of them are out. There's a couple kind of stuck down in there. New solid lifters came with the other head, so I don't really need those ones. So what I got to do here is I got to take the thermostat housing off the block. So it looks like I'm going to have to take the top off to get a wrench in there. It looks like Torx. I think that's going to be it. And so it's just the manifold and the thermostat housing on the old head. So this is the exhaust side of the turbo, and this is the intake air side of the turbo. So the exhaust comes out, spins the turbine on a connected shaft here, and it basically compresses the air from the intake, filters down here. So it compresses the air from the intake, and so the air that goes into the cylinder when the piston goes down it's actually compressed air to a degree, and that gives you more horsepower because you got more oxygen, more molecules of oxygen to mix with the fuel, so you get more power for that certain volume of air. And what I did here earlier was I just took a little bit of fine sandpaper, and I blocked off the other cylinders when I was doing one. You know, I would switch between them, and I just took the top edges off of these marks on the tops of the piston. Any little, like some of them had a bit of a chip sticking up, so I got rid of those. I cleaned them up, and I oiled it, and Yeah, it doesn't look too bad, actually. You'll still see a little mark on the pistons there. You can see those little dings, but there's nothing sticking up. And what I was afraid of was I was afraid that a little piece of aluminum that was sticking up would, you know, break free and, you know, rattle around in there. It wasn't very big, but I mean, I didn't want anything happening like that. So I tidied them up the best I could without, you know, digging too deep into the pistons. And the other thing I did was I got a new oil separator. I just finished putting that on the block here. There's the old one here. And they're sort of a known problem. So, you know, they're hard to get to with the head-ons because your intake manifold's all over here and everything. So I got one of those and put it in. The other thing I did was I put the alternator back in. I had that off. And, you know, I'm trying to look at all the stuff I can do down underneath the head while I've got the head off. Because the minute that head goes in there, especially with the turbo on it, it takes up a lot of real estate under here. And I want to make sure I get all my stuff done down there first. And I picked up another head, luckily. There's a guy selling a head, and it was all redone, and so he sort of lost interest in the project, and it's a completely rebuilt head, and it's perfect. It actually came with the camshafts and the top cover and everything. So even it came with a head gasket and 12 new head bolts. So I mean, for the price, I couldn't turn it down, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this engine, but when this head presented itself, I thought, okay, I'll put it together and see what happens. And the other day I went down in here and some of these lines were pretty rusty, and I just had some rust paint, you know, I just went on these lines. I just, you know, I didn't want them to corrode through. You know, it's not really anything you're going to see, but you know, I just wanted to preserve them a little bit. I'll explain a few of these lines here. This one and this one, it's cooling for the turbo, so there's a bearing in between there, and there's a passage in between where engine coolant circulates through there to help keep it cool. And this line here is oil under pressure from the engine, and it passes through, and then this line here is the drain of oil, and so the oil drains out of the turbo, and it just goes through this line, and it plugs into the sump, and it just gravity feeds into the sump. And there's a coolant line for the back of the head here. So that was kind of a, you know, a snarl to get into when I didn't know what I was unhooking. You know, it's the first time I've done one of these, but when you see it out like that, that makes it a lot clearer. I got a new gasket for the where the turbo goes onto the flex pipe, and I just put a new lower hose in here. This hose had been bumped when I took out the head, so I didn't like the mark that was in it. So I thought, now's the time to change it, you know, while you got everything out. Because the minute this head goes in here with the turbo, it fills up a lot in here, and there's a lot of digging around underneath to get done. And so I got the alternator hooked back up, and yeah, so, and the other thing is, you saw where I went to the junkyard a couple weeks ago because I had broken off a fitting. So what I did was I made up I spliced it in, and there's that new connector, and that goes to your the intake air temperature sensor. Okay, and so that's ready to go. And so there's the head, there's the intake manifold, that's upside down. The throttle body goes on here upside down, and there's the exhaust manifold and the turbo. So that all seems pretty good. There was these two little bolts. I had a hard time getting them out when that was the one thing that was, you know, holding the head from coming off the engine. You know, I couldn't figure it out. And so I got two new bolts for here. And if you look at the top of the video there, I put a link for when I took this head out, where I took the other head out with the bent valves. And you'll see the trouble I had getting these, because I couldn't really see them. You know, you can't see up in there very well once you get everything in place. So what I've done now is I've run them down in the holes. I'm going to lube them up and make sure that they're easy to get in. And these are exhaust manifold gaskets. And okay, so I'm just going to sit the head over like that. Here's the exhaust side. And that little line I showed you a minute ago for the cooling goes right here. There's a gasket I ordered. I could have made one up, but it was 39 cents or something, so I bought another gasket for there. And it's this pipe right here, this one here. Yeah, so I'm going to put the manifold on here. I'm not going to show you every step of this, but I'm going to show you the broad strokes as I go. And let's get started. Okay, so I got some new exhaust manifold gaskets. Okay, and here's the original bolts. There's the gaskets there. I'm just going to dip them each in a little engine oil as I put them in. Okay, so I got all the studs in loose. Gasket under each one. And I just got a spacer and a nut to put on this one. And then we can start tightening those down. Okay, just remember when you're tightening these down, steel bolts into aluminum. Don't overdo it. You don't want to strip them. That would not be a fun afternoon. Okay, I've got the manifold bolted down on the head. Now, when I took this head off, I had a lot of trouble getting this pipe unbolted from the bottom. And basically it's the oil drain. The oil feeds in the top here, and it just drains into the block. It goes into a little gasketed hole in the block, just like your dipstick tube does. Same thing. So I got an idea here. I'm not sure if it's going to work for me or not, but I'm going to install this here on the bench and try and put it in with the head. And, you know, I'll just have to hold the head up a little bit and hopefully guide it into that hole. That'll save me a whole bunch of mucking around, having to get underneath there and find these, because you can't see anything up under there. You know, it's really tough. So I'm going to try it. And worst case scenario, I'll have to haul it off and put it on from underneath. But this looks real easy out on the bench. Okay, so lifting it on with this pipe already attached. In a word, no. It didn't work. You need 3 people and a crane and you know, a case of beer and some other type of therapy in amongst it. It's bad. I wrestled with it for 10 minutes and it didn't hurt anything, but no. That's the easiest word, no. So I'm gonna take that off of there, and I'll have to put that in once the head's in place. Too bad, so sad, but I just don't like this design. How come that couldn't have been a hose? You know, there's no pressure. That could have been some kind of a quick connect or something, and no. It's just got to be this nasty thing. Okay, so I had these cooling lines and the oil line hooked up, had it in place, and I couldn't get this pipe on. I couldn't even see the back of the block where this line went into the block, like the gravity feed. It's just impossible. It's unbelievable. So I pulled the head off again. There, you can see where see right here, this is the pipe, this one here, it goes into the block. I put some silicone on there. You cannot see any of this from anywhere, from top, bottom. Once that's installed, you can't, from the bottom, I couldn't even reach any of this. I could barely get my fingers on this stuff from the back. Okay, so basically this little bracket here over to this oil line holds that sort of positioned, you know, until you get everything in place, and then you can put the bolts in it. But that's a shitty design, man. I've worked on a lot of stuff, and that is a piece of garbage. Like, whoever designed that, I don't care how good Volvo thinks their cars are, that is bad. I got other words, but I'm not going to use them here. I'll leave it at that. Okay, gonna clean this up, sit it back in and see if we can get that attached. Okay, it's the next morning. I made a couple of gaskets. You only need one, but I made 2 in case I break one as I'm trying to put it in. I'm gonna use cap screws. What was in there was a Torx type head. It's similar to this. This is an Allen head. This is another one I had. I was going to try this, but I think what I want to try and do is get up there with an extension with a socket on it. And I don't have an Allen wrench on a socket. I could go get one, but I've got all this other stuff. So I'm going to use cap screws in there, and I got short ones and I got a couple little longer ones if I can use them. I'll use the longest ones I can get in there, but I think these might be just a shade too long. They're 6mm, what they are, the thread on them. And the head on these are 10mm. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna get under there with the pipe. I'm gonna redo this seal and silicone into the block and put that in place. And it's very hard to film under there, but just want to show you what I was going to do, and I'll show you a shot of it hopefully when it's installed. Okay, I got that pipe in there. I just want to see if I can show you how tough it is to get in there. Okay, I got my little sleeping cushion here. Let me just show you here. I got the car well blocked up. I got axle stands here, and I got blocks there, and I got the wheels blocked, and I got the emergency brake on, and it's not going anywhere. But I just got a little pad I put in here to lay on. Let me just show you here. Get under here. Just get under here. So this piece I got my hand on here, it's a gearbox. It's an L-shaped gearbox. It takes power out of the transmission here, front right wheel, and it also takes it here. That's the rear drive shaft for the rear wheels. This is an all-wheel drive car. So this assembly here is right in the way. If you had a front wheel drive, it'd be easy to get to. But if you can see up there, see, I can put my hand up around here. Okay, here's the turbo here. Okay, that's the exhaust side of the turbo and the fresh air side of the turbo. And right here, see right there, that little bolt? That's one I put in, and the other one right there. And you just can't, you know, I can barely turn my hand in here, you know, to hold a bolt. I could just barely get it in there. So how I ended up doing it was I used 1/4-inch extensions and a universal joint, and I did it with 1/4-inch drive, and I got them in there. And yeah, that's the worst of it. This comes with it's like a Torx bolt on it, but they stripped out when I tried to take them out. You know, when I first did this, when a Torx head gets rusty, you know, it's just like, you know, one bad turn and you've stripped it out, you know, the circle in there. So I wanted hex bolts on here. I don't ever want to get in here and do this again, but you never know. Things might happen, you know. And I wanted hex bolts anyway for the next poor guy that has to get under here. Something you can get at with a socket, right? Anyway, so that's it. And I mean, we're talking 3.5, 4 inches between the bottom of the car and my chest. All right, I could have had it higher, and you know, if I had a proper lift and stuff, but this is what most people are going to be up against, you know, in their garage or in their yard doing this. So yeah, it's a tough spot. Anyway, we got them in there, we got them nice and snug, and I was able to I put one in, and then I put a lock washer under the head of the second one. Then I took the first one out and put a lock washer under the head of the first one. So yeah, this should be good. Okay, and there was a gasket, don't forget, that went in between there. And let's show you in here a little bit. Okay, here we go. There, almost back out again. There, and that's the kind of fun you can have under a VOLVO V70. I just want to show you what I got up in there with. I just had a bunch of 1/4-inch stuff all joined together. I had a universal on the end of it and a 10mm socket, and then to hold the bolt in there, I've got some extra bolts here. What I did was I put a little bit of shop towel down in there, and I left it just sticking up on the sides a bit, and then it captures the bolt, so the bolt didn't fall out when I tipped it over or something. It held in the shop towel like that, and then I just got it in there with a screwdriver, and then once I got it in there, I switched the screwdriver for a small ratchet. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to torque the head down. Okay, they're all 44 foot-pounds. Now we're going to get our angle gauge.